This is where the law stops. And I start. Stallone is a cop called Cobra.
Welcome to Random Movie Reviews. I'm Nathan, and today I'll be talking about Cobra. So I'm continuing my little mini-series of Stallone reviews I've been doing for the past couple of weeks, starting with Cliffhanger, going on to First Blood, and then Rambo 4, and today I'm going to be talking about one of my personal favorites, and that is Cobra. Oh man, there's a lot to go over. For the regular viewers of my channel, you guys are probably already aware I have a strong affinity for anything schlock, campy genre movies, and that relates to action, sci-fi, and horror. And when it comes to campy action movies in particular, Cobra ranks very highly with me as being one of my personal favorites. This is one of those movies that I would label as hilariously badass, not necessarily hilariously bad, and I do believe there is a distinction. This was a movie that when it came out, it was pretty much savaged by every movie critic known to man. The movie was labeled as being too violent, too generic, and too just basic. Dirty Harry knockoff was one of the many complaints that this movie was seen as. And by the way, all the critiques of this movie are very accurate. This is one of those movies that does every action cliche you can possibly imagine. It has little to no originality whatsoever in terms of the characters, in terms of the storytelling and plot developments, and everything you've seen in this movie before you've seen in most other 80s action movies, and even some slasher movies, which I'll get into. But that's also what gives this movie its charm. It's the fact that this movie takes all of those genre tropes so seriously that it ends up being quite entertaining. And when there is action in this movie, and there's a lot of it, specifically in the later half of this movie, it's actually really well filmed, and there's some memorable scenes that are a lot of fun. And there's a certain atmosphere that Cobra has that I think makes it stand out from other 80s action movies. The first half of this movie plays like a crime thriller with some heavy slasher elements that are genuinely well directed and has a strong tension to them. And there's a certain aesthetic that this movie has that I find to be really attractive, that I just really get into this movie every time I rewatch it, and I rewatch it quite a bit. I think that all of the critiques that Cobra got at the time of its release adds to the charm of the film. I wouldn't even consider those flaws. I consider them part of the overall package that makes Cobra such an enjoyable, fun movie if you're a fan of schlocky entertainment films like I am. And that's precisely why Cobra has gone on to have such a significant cult following. One that's actually been acknowledged by Stallone. I saw a video recently where Stallone was talking about this new doll, a Cobra collectible doll that's coming out, and he mentioned in that video that Cobra was one of his favorite characters he's played outside of course, Rocky and Rambo.
You know, one of the favorite characters, top 3 ever, was Cobra. Oh, I used to look that pretty.
Cobra actually came about starting with Beverly Hills Cop, where he was originally offered to play the lead in that movie, but Stallone heavily rewrote it, took out all the comedic elements and put a bunch of action stuff in there, and the producers were like, you know what, we actually wanted this to be an action comedy, so we're going to go a different direction. And so they brought in Eddie Murphy. Thank God, because I absolutely love Beverly Hills Cop, and that movie works perfectly as is. And Stallone took some of those ideas and elements and wanted to make his own cop movie, and the result is Cobra, a movie that is very loosely based on a book called Fair Game, but mostly doesn't have a whole lot to do with that book. I was looking at the differences, and there's quite a bit, but that's how we ended up with Cobra. Movie centers around Marion Cobretti, a renegade cop who doesn't play by the rules and is part of the zombie squad, the last resort. Movie opens up with a crazy man going to a grocery store looking to kill innocent, weak people as a part of the new world. There's an overall evil cult gang going around LA who's killing innocent people for the sake of the new world. The police believe these actions are being done by one man. I'm going to talk about why that's kind of a massive plot hole in this movie, which there's a lot of. But the cops show up and they're like, oh my God, this is a situation that we can't handle. We can't go in there against one man with a shotgun. We have to call in the Cobra.
All the Cobra.
That's where Stallone shows up in his custom awesome car. Got the aviators on with the matchstick in his mouth. He goes into the store, takes a sip of Coors, talks to the bad guy, tells him why he's a disease.
I'm a hero of the new world.
You're a disease, and I'm the cure.
throws a knife at him, shoots him down, and that's to establish just how awesome and badass Cobra is. Then we see the main antagonist of this movie, who doesn't have a name, played by the actor Brian Thompson. Him and this evil cultish gang are going around killing people, and we see some of those murders. And then Bridget Nielsen, a model who's known as Ingrid, drives by one of these murders and sees the very menacing face of Brian Thompson. And one of the ladies who is part of this evil cult, who turns out to be a police officer, gets the license plate, and the whole movie revolves around this gang going after Bridget Nielsen and Cobra basically protecting her, and them developing a romance throughout the movie. And then the later half of this movie turns into full-blown action mayhem. Like I said, the first half kind of has that slasher vibe. There's a really great scene where Brian Thompson sneaks into the hospital with his hair dyed, wearing glasses, tries to go kill Bridget Nielsen. There's a great kind of Shining-esque moment in that scene. But of course, Cobra shows up in the nick of time, and him and his partner, they work together to get her out of the situation and lure out this evil gang. And that's basically Cobra in a nutshell. But yeah, the Dirty Harry influence is made very apparent, and the cops are always, you know, you're acting reckless. You could have gotten people killed, and it's really hilarious. And there's one scene when I was rewatching the movie that really stood out to me, where Cobra, right from the beginning, is like, I happen to think that all of these murders that are happening around LA are a gang of people, not just one person. Well, what makes you think that? And there's literally a scene where, after the whole hospital fiasco and Cobra and Ingrid are going to be driving out of town to get her out of danger, there's a car chase that happens, a really awesome, badass car chase. There's even a great scene where Cobra pulls a 180, shoots the truck behind him, and it blows up. Classic 80s awesomeness. I love it. But it's like numerous killers are coming after him. It's Brian Thompson and just an army of goons, essentially. And then after that car chase, the next scene is him in the police precinct, and you know, all the other higher up cops are yelling at him. Why do you keep saying that there's a gang of killers? Like, how do we not know it's not just one man? Or I don't know. How about the fact that he was just chased down by like an army of people led by Brian Thompson? Maybe that kind of tells you that, okay, there are numerous killers out on the loose. And in fact, before that, the scene where Cobra believes that Brian Thompson is going after Bridget Nielsen in the hospital, at his house there are numerous thugs that show up with the axe and stuff like that. And what, the cops just ignored those bodies? Like, oh, they're not part of the murders. It doesn't even matter. This is still one man that's committing all these acts. Like, that plot hole alone just shows you how like lazy this movie is. But what elevates the movie's, you know, laziness is kind of its attitude, its atmosphere. I love the slasher elements in the first half of this movie, and I love how crazy and unhinged the action gets in the latter half of this movie. Specifically that in the climax, when they're in like that whole factory stuff, and one of the greatest villain deaths of all time. It's so awesome. But there's just a lot of these little moments in between Cobra that are so strange. For example, early on in the movie, after the whole grocery store thing, Stallone tries to go back to his house, and there's like these gang characters outside of the house in their lowrider and stuff like that. They're trying to intimidate Cobra, and Stallone grabs the actor's wife beater and pulls it down, and his mic for, you know, talking his dialogue into is like clearly exposed, which tells me that scene probably wasn't scripted. And you could tell that like after the fact, the actor's like, I don't really know what to do, so he kind of just grabs himself at Stallone. And then we go right into another scene that gets talked about all the time, where Stallone goes into his apartment, you know, very kind of oddly drawn out scene where he goes to the fridge, pulls out an egg carton that has his gun cleaning supplies inside, which he keeps in the fridge for some reason, then gets a pizza and bizarrely cuts it with a pair of scissors so he can give himself a mini pizza. You also get the photo shoot of Bridget Nielsen. I don't know what she's modeling for, but she's modeling around a bunch of robots. There's also a scene later on where the movie actually tries to develop a romance between Cobra and Ingrid. There's a scene where she's just dumping a weird amount of ketchup on top of her fries. That is not how you eat fries. It's very disturbing to me. And all of those little moments on top of the fact that the action is actually really well done. That car chase in the middle part of the movie is awesome. Then we go, basically, once Cobra figures out that the lady cop is part of the Night Stalkers, or whatever the gang is called, the New World, from then on, the movie is one non-stop action sequence where we get another car chase. Stallone is shooting at the guys with like his custom-made SMG, which is pretty badass, and they go into the orange grove, and then they go into the whole factory where Cobra sets a man on fire. You have the right to remain silent. Then we get the final showdown between Cobra and Brian Thompson.
The court is civilized. isn't it? This is where the law stops, and I start. Sucker.
Yeah! All right! Which, by the way, gotta mention, Brian Thompson, legitimately very intimidating in this movie. He just has a face that's, like, horrifying. And although he doesn't have much of a character, that's not this type of movie. In terms of, like, an intimidating screen presence, he is very memorable and is a big highlight in this movie overall. But we get one of the best villain deaths where, they're fighting, they're scrapping it out, and Cobra picks him up and puts it on this giant metal hook, right in the back, and he's getting carried into a wall of fire, essentially. Oh, man. What a fucking way to end the movie. We then get one more confrontation between Cobra and Andrew Robinson, and Cobra punches him in the face, and then he gets on his motorcycle and he rides into the sunset with his new lady friend. And yeah, this kind of sweet little ending for a movie that is kind of super violent for most of the movie. It's just so campy and fun and ridiculous, and it delivers on all of the elements that you would want to see in an 80s action movie, or at least it does for me. Like I said, I love this movie. I love this movie like I love Schwarzenegger's Commando. Although I do think Commando's better because Commando rides that line perfectly of taking itself seriously while also having a tongue-in-cheek kind of attitude, winking at the audiences a little bit. Cobra doesn't do that at all. Cobra takes itself very seriously, and that's kind of why I love it. But that's my thoughts on Cobra. I want to hear from you guys, specifically the Stallone fans out there. What are your thoughts on this cult classic of Stallone's? Do you like it? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Mention it in the comments below. And as always, thank you guys for watching.